Recently, I had an experience that got me thinking a lot about status and art as a career and fame. And I did my best to organize my thoughts in essay format. And that's what I'll be speaking out loud to you today. So what was the experience? Well, I started a YouTube channel. I might have been a little crooked there, I corrected myself. Posting on social media, pursuing an artistic career, and the weird shame that comes with both of those things. But then when somebody has some success per se, or gains a little bit of a following, it immediately feels less embarrassing. And I just find that so interesting. And that's what I want to talk about today. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're starting off with a bang, talking about the American dream. Yes, that plays into this, I think. The whole idea of the American dream is that anyone can become a success story. No matter how humble your roots, that you can pick yourself up by your bootstraps and really make a life for yourself. Anyone can be anybody in America. That's the idea of the American dream. And because we've been sold this narrative our whole life that success equals hard work, we're obsessed with the idea of deserving our place in life, that success equals hard work. So people who work hard are successful and they make good lives for themselves. And so people who don't have good lives, if you will, people who aren't successful, must not have worked hard enough to have that. So pursuing acting, music, social media as a career and not succeeding is perceived as a failure. It's perceived as a failure in skill. Like you weren't good enough at that art to be successful, because if you had worked hard enough, you would have become good enough. And if you were good enough, then you would have been successful, because that is how it works. That is the American dream. That is what we all have been promised. Yet all the industries I listed are notoriously overrun with people who are trying to have careers in that art. And it's pretty well known that your success in movies and Broadway is in some part related to skill, but is also in large part just related to opportunity. Being the right person for the right role that gets your foot in the door. Now you have fans, now more people want to cast you in more things. It's well known that people who are well talented enough to perform in Broadway productions or be in films, that write good music, that make good music, never really get their foot in the door, never really have a solid career. That's not necessarily correlated with how good a musician or an actor you are. And that's because there are only so many slots. There are only so many big budget films being made at any point in time. There are only so many Broadway shows. With things like music and social media, it becomes a lot more interesting because there isn't necessarily a limit to how many songs can be on Spotify or how many YouTube videos can be out there. There is a limit to people's attention, right? It's the attention economy. One person can only listen to so much music in a day. One person can only watch so many YouTube videos, so many TikTok videos. So you're not necessarily competing for a slot in a movie, but you're competing for a slot in people's attention. So there is still, in a way, only so many slots, is what I'm saying. The other weird thing about social media is that social media involves algorithms. So for casting movies and TV shows and Broadway, there's actual casting directors. There are people, they're selecting those who are going to star in the movies and the shows, right? So there's this idea that there's someone sitting there who is checking off a box, who is saying, yes, you are skilled enough to be in this. And so not getting cast in a role is almost like saying you weren't good enough for it, even though that's not really the main factor. You've got to also fit the role. But with social media, it's very strange, because instead of being chosen by a human being, you're being chosen by an algorithm in a way. And the algorithms on social media are viewed as these godlike beings that decide who gets to have a career in social media and who doesn't. And much like we consider there to be an aspect of luck in getting cast in a movie, you've got to be the right person for the role at the right time and get the audition and all of that. There's an aspect of luck in algorithms as well. As a result, there are all of these videos online that talk about how to game the algorithm almost. What time of day should you post at? How do you make your titles? How do you make your thumbnails? All of that in order to be successful in the YouTube algorithm. Videos I have been consuming because I want to be successful in the YouTube algorithm. And I just find it so interesting, especially as a software engineer, to see the way people talk about these algorithms, again, almost as if they're these sentient godlike beings who are selecting people to be famous on social media. Your title and your thumbnail and the subject of your video and how catchy the intro is are almost these offerings that you make to the god. And the god that is the algorithm then decides if your offerings are good enough to push your video out to a lot of people. It's more of just something I've noticed in the way people talk about these algorithms that I think are so interesting. The algorithm doesn't care how good your title is or how good your video is. It's getting people to click on the video. The more people click on your video and the more of it they watch, watch, when they click on it, the more your video will get pushed to other people. About catching people's attention. It's not really about pleasing the algorithm. How do I please the gods of YouTube so that I can become a YouTuber? The truth is, no one really knows. You give yourself a better chance at going viral if you make really, really good content, obviously. The more people want to watch your videos, the more likely it is that you are successful. But I do think there are some of these other factors at play as well. But we like the idea that it correlates to the quality of your content, because then again, it's this idea that if you can work hard and you can make really good content, that you can be successful, that anybody can be successful on YouTube as long as you learn how to make good content. So if you put the effort in and the time in and you continue to improve your content and learn, eventually you will be successful on YouTube. Now, the thing is, even as I'm making this video, I do on some level believe that. I believe that anybody out there can learn how to make quality content, and that if your content is interesting, you will eventually have success. I do think there are still other factors, but I do think there is a strong correlation there. The better your content is, the more likely you are to gain subscribers. It just makes sense. And then we, in a weird way, reverse correlate that back to, what am I doing with my hand? Sorry. People getting cast in movies and TV shows and Broadway shows. As much as it's widely known, there are only so many slots and it's very difficult to make it in these careers, there still is this idea that if you are talented enough, eventually you will be successful. But that idea that the people who are successful deserve that success can sometimes negatively impact certain people, and we see that specifically with Nepo babies. Nepotism babies are people who are the children of people who are already famous in some industry, presumably wealthy due to their fame in that industry. And so due to nepotism, they almost have a guaranteed career in something that is typically seen as very difficult to get into, such as acting or modeling or music. And recently, Nepo babies have become a huge topic of conversation because people have become aware of just how many of their favorite celebrities are the children of people who were already successful in Hollywood, either as producers or actors or musicians, whatever it might be. This has led to a lot of scrutiny and a lot of hate being pointed at these Nepo babies, and a lot of accusations, if you will, that they don't deserve their fame. Now, generally speaking, if we acknowledge that opportunity and skill are just different things, and that one can have the skill and not have the opportunity, and one can have the opportunity and not have the skill, it follows that someone could have the opportunity and have the skill. And so I think it's very interesting that we see various Nepo babies react differently to this accusation that they don't deserve the fame that they have. Some people fully acknowledge that they know they got a leg up because of who their parents are, and they know that gave them an advantage, and they're understanding of that and they're grateful for that. Those people typically escape the scrutiny of being a Nepo baby. The people who really have the reputation for being Nepo babies are the people who either argue that it didn't help them at all, or argue that it actually hurt them more than people realize. That is its whole own video subject, and a lot of people have made videos on that specifically. That's not what today's video is about, so I'm gonna stop talking about that now. But going back to the idea that hard work equals success, people deserve to be successful. If you work hard, you deserve to be successful. Therefore, if you are not successful, you didn't work hard enough. And that is part of why we view failure as so embarrassing. Ultimately, it's very strange that we view it as so embarrassing to try to be a musician, just for example, but then we view it as really, really cool to be a famous musician, and these famous musicians are very cool. What's the difference between someone who's trying to be a musician and somebody who is a successful and famous musician? I said it right there. The latter is successful. And we view failure as embarrassing, and so we almost view people who are failing at these artistic careers to be worse at whatever it is they're trying to do than the people who have been successful. And we view failure to be embarrassing. This brings me to the idea of degrees and certification as it pertains to the arts. I don't think anybody out there views a degree in art as a certification that you are good at that art. And I find that very interesting. It's just a societal impression we have for some reason that art school does not give you the same certification that engineering school or law school does. And I think it's because of the guarantee of success coming out of school. If you graduate from college with a degree in computer science or software engineering, you are very likely to get a job as a software engineer. Having a degree in art does not guarantee you a life making money making art coming out of school. And so because it doesn't guarantee that, we don't view the degree as a certification. We view the success as the certification. You have to actually have people paying you for your art in order to be viewed societally as somebody who deserves to be paid for your art. And it's fascinating to me. I find it very interesting. I also think, though, it's the perception of who is paying you. Say you work for Apple. Your salary is paid by Apple. However, Apple has the money to pay your salary because they sell products to consumers. So at the end of the day, it is the consumers of Apple products that pay for your salary. But we don't view it that way. We view it as being paid by Apple to do work for Apple. But with art, a lot of times the consumer is directly paying the artist in some way. If you buy a ticket to the concert, yes, it's a lot more complicated than that. You're paying the company that's putting on the concert, but you're paying money to see that artist, and eventually that artist will pocket money because of the money you spent on your ticket. You are paying money out of your paycheck to that artist. If you buy a book at the store, you are paying your cash for a book that is eventually going to put money in the author's pocket. You see what I'm saying? So our perception is that it is the everyday people that pay the salaries of artists, but it is not the perception that it is everyday people who pay the salaries of doctors, lawyers, and engineers, even though it is the everyday people who pay everybody's salaries. In some way or another, it's the money we all have made that is paid back into everybody else. We come back to this really interesting subject that I swear we're getting to in my little script here, of deserving to have a career in art, of deserving that money from people, deserving other people's hard-earned cash. I want to take a second here and stress that I don't think that this means that we can't criticize artists, because I feel like people are going to jump to that being the conclusion that I'm making here, and that's not what I'm saying. If you are paying your money for something, then you deserve to have an opinion of whatever it is you're paying for. I always think it's kind of silly when authors get mad about reviews, but that's not what I mean when I say deserving to have a career in art. Like, I'm not saying that in order to kind of unlearn this idea that we have to stop criticizing artists. That's not what I mean. But again, we fall back on this idea of deserving fame, deserving money, and deserving the luxury of having a career making art. Coming back to social media, I think this idea that somebody deserves the amount of money they're making is most evident in the influencers that we see, especially ones who do more lifestyle content, who are just kind of posting videos of their lives, or who do lip syncing or dance videos on TikTok. Their content is not really hard to make, but most of us understand that making dance videos for TikTok, lip syncing videos, or just kind of filming your life is not necessarily a difficult job. Making a TikTok is not hard. So when we find out how much some influencers charge for an ad on one of their videos, it sounds insane to us. Because how is it that somebody could get paid tens of thousands of dollars to make a video that's less than 30 seconds long? And it seems like it's a new problem, but it's not really, because modern art has existed for a while. There are a lot of people who are very critical of modern art because of its simplicity, and there's this general impression that, like, if I could do it too, then you shouldn't get paid that much money for it. Now, obviously, with modern art, I think it's a little bit different than the lip syncing videos, except not really. Art evokes a feeling, so if the art evokes a feeling in the viewer, it's worth as much as it was worth to the person who was willing to pay for it. Now, I'm sure I'll get comments from people who feel like these are different examples because making modern art takes a skill that making lip syncing videos maybe doesn't. I don't think that's true, because again, there's a simplicity to modern art. You don't necessarily have to have the skill with painting, but you have to have the ability to evoke the emotion with it, which is in and of itself a skill, but is not the same skill as being very detailed with your painting. I think with lip syncing videos and dance videos and the day in my life videos and all of those kinds of things, there is a skill to it in that you have to make it entertaining enough that people want to watch it. There are a lot of people who are trying to make lip syncing videos and dance videos who are not making a ton of money off of it on TikTok right now. As we covered earlier in the video, it's probably not all luck doing that. There is something entertaining about the videos those people are making. There is a skill there, the same way there's a skill in making modern art. The real problem here, though, is that both of these examples show us the truth of capitalism, which is that it's not that hard work equals success. The harder you work, the more money you make. Capitalism really boils down to two things. It's not that complicated: supply and demand and return on investment. If you have something a lot of people want, you can charge a lot of money for people to have it. If you have something that people are willing to pay a lot of money for, then they will pay you a lot of money for it, obviously. And if a company is going to get a large return on an investment they'll make in you, then they are willing to pay you more money for that return. So for these influencers, they have so much power because of their audiences, because of their ability to reach millions of people. It's advertising gold. And so advertisers are willing to pay gold, are willing to pay real money to get ads on these videos, not because the videos are difficult to make or because those influencers are working very hard, but because those companies are going to get a large return on their investment. But then the viewer sees this and it bothers us because we feel like we work way harder than those people do. So why is it that they are are making like millions of dollars a year and I am not. Especially when somebody is really struggling to get by, they're struggling to pay their bills, maybe they're working multiple jobs. This idea can be enraging that somebody can just film themselves for a few minutes a day, edit it together and post it and make literally tens of thousands of dollars for the work they did that day. But it's because it's not about hard work. Seeing these influencers up close and personal on our screens shatters the idea that hard work equals success. The idea that we've been sold all of our lives that the harder you work, the more successful you will be. It's very painful for us to see this reality because it tells us that there's a possibility that we could work the hardest out of anybody and never be as successful as some of these people who are not working very hard. That luck and opportunity and to a certain level skill plays a lot more into it than hard work does. As much as we talk about understanding this as a society now, and as much as it seems like the new generation understands that the American dream is a little bit of a farce and that it's a lot harder to change your situation than people think, not saying it's impossible, just saying it's a lot harder than people think, and that a lot of people who are struggling financially right now are working very hard. As much as we claim to understand this, we still see where this impacts our impression of different people. We claim to understand that hard work has nothing to do with it, and yet we hate the influencer who isn't working that hard and is making a lot of money instead of hating the society that made that possible. It's somehow those influencers' fault that they ended up in a better situation than we did. There's a saying, I forget who said it. If I can find the source of the quote, I'll put it on the screen. There's a saying that the problem with the American dream is that everybody thinks they're going to be rich one day. Nobody wants to really fight back against these ideas because, well, what if it happens to me? What if I get lucky enough? What if I make good enough content? What if I become successful? What if I start to make a lot of money? Then I can be one of those people. And it's that idea that keeps us all in this cycle. If you think it's possible that you could become one of the uber elite, then you want the uber elite to exist so that you can become one of them. I don't mean to be overly depressing though. Understanding this can be very, very freeing. And I just think that really internalizing the idea that you work hard enough to get the job done is good enough in a lot of situations can lead to a better mental health and a better life. But again, goes against the American dream and it goes against that hustle culture that the American dream creates. So let's talk about hustle culture. Hustle culture and the American dream have convinced many of us there's no point in doing anything if you're not going to make money while you're doing it. At the same time, we frown on successful artists and content creators who are in it for the money and demand this humble attitude of, I never thought I'd get famous from everybody. The idea that somebody wants to be famous is crass and tacky. Trying to be famous is embarrassing, but being successful at being famous is really, really cool and something worthy of applause. But inadvertently becoming famous due to your skill at your art is something to be revered. I think all of this ties back to the idea of deserving fame and deserving money. Fame and money are something to be coveted, to be desired. And in order to keep up this idea of the American dream, we have to keep up the idea that it is something that can be attained. One can become rich and famous if you weren't born into it, but you have to deserve it. And you can deserve it by being good at your art and being a good person. In our society, we don't view vanity as a trait that good people have. Good people aren't vain. Good people aren't self-centered. And in a way, wanting fame is vain and self-centered. Wanting to be successful in art, wanting to have fans, wanting to have people who are willing to pay you for your art on some level presumes that you can make art good enough for people to pay for. And so if you're making art and people don't want to pay for that art, you're vain, you're crass, you're arrogant, you think too highly of yourself. And these are not traits of good people, and so those people don't deserve the fame they are striving for. On the flip side of that, we view celebrities that choose to lead very, very private lives as something to be coveted. We also view celebrities who choose to be in the public eye a lot as attention seeking. I think this is also what leads to that hate on Nepo babies, is they were born into fame and money, and so they don't deserve it. They didn't earn it the way that people who weren't born into fame and money did. Supposedly, allegedly. All of this just ties back to the idea that skill equals success, and so people who are successful should be people who are very skilled and who worked very hard. And I just really think we have to reject the idea that anybody deserves fame. That's such a weird thing. Like, fame is such a weird thing. It's a weird thing and no one deserves it. No one deserves to be revered at the level that some of these celebrities are. People are put on a pedestal. People are treated like they're above human. It isn't possible for a human being on planet Earth to be worth that tier of reverence. And I also think that is what leads to so much of the weird, like, cancel culture we have now. And I recently saw this tweet or something that said that people are more focused on someone having never done anything wrong than on doing something right. And I think that's so true. If you can find literally anything wrong with someone's fave, then you can argue that that person shouldn't be their fave. And the only people that are celebrated in the media are the people who have completely squeaky clean resumes. But then interestingly enough, the only way to have a squeaky clean resume like that is to be very private, because I hate to break it to you, nobody has that squeaky clean resume. Everybody has something about them that is kind of icky. It is true about all human beings. It's part of what makes us so beautiful, I think. Nobody's perfect and everybody's different. And if we were all perfect and we were all the same, it'd be so boring. Celebrity and celebrity worship thrives on the idea that there are these perfect people out there in the world and that they are the ones that are worthy of this fame and this glam and this money that they're making for whatever it is they're doing. And anytime we find out information that contradicts that, we hate it and then we end up hating that person.
Quick clarification. Sometimes people do really horrible things and those people deserve to go to jail. So when people are talking about not deserving to like be famous because you're doing horrible things, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about like the mundane. For example, when Rachel Zegler was getting canceled because she's like kind of cringe and people were saying they were gonna boycott the Snow White movie because she had like a cringe interview about the Snow White movie. Celebrities are not who you think they are, and people hold celebrities on these pedestals. That's the point I'm making. And celebrities are normal people and they have the same flaws as normal people, and assuming that your fave celebrity doesn't have any flaws is just setting yourself up to be really heartbroken when you do finally see that they have some kind of flaw. But when I say flaw, I mean the mundane flaws that we all have. I don't mean committing crimes or doing largely horrible things. Obviously, there are some people that we should not support. I just wanted to make sure that was super clear.
Reject the idea that anybody deserves to be famous or wealthy. Just get that out of your head. Nobody deserves to be famous or wealthy. These are crazy concepts that we made up as a human race. Yes, some people are famous. Yes, some people have a lot of money. That doesn't mean that they deserved it more than somebody who didn't. So that's a lot of why I think we view it as so embarrassing to try and be a musician or to try and become famous on social media. But then once somebody makes it, that embarrassment goes away because you've had success, because you've proven that you can make content good enough for people to want to consume. So the idea that it's because of your vanity goes out the window. Like, you don't assume that about yourself anymore. You have evidence to that. You have evidence to the idea that people actually want to watch your videos, and so now it's not embarrassing for you to think that people would want to watch your videos. Whereas before, when you had no evidence that anybody wanted to watch your videos, it was embarrassing to think that anybody would, and so just by the sheer fact of posting them, you have done something embarrassing because you assumed that somebody out there would want to watch it. Otherwise, why did you post it? And it's interesting to me for two reasons, and I was really struggling to figure out the order of this section of the video. I'm just gonna go in an order and just know that both of these points kind of fork off of what I just said, right? The first thing I'm gonna talk about is the embarrassment of failure. In our society, it is viewed as so embarrassing to have failed at something. The idea that you failed is like the worst idea that we can have. I think I would have to spend a lot more time thinking about this to really unpack this, but just for a bit of a surface level assessment for this video, the idea that somebody would post on social media just for fun is a bit of a farce. People can say that, but a lot of people don't really believe it at this point. Oh, I just find making the videos fun. Oh, I just enjoy it. Oh, I would still post them if no one was watching. Even though for a lot of people that is true, and a lot of people do have an extended number of videos that they posted before anybody really watched their videos. Most of the content creators that you love so much had a large number of videos that they posted before anybody really watched their content. So there is truth to it, and yet it's something that none of us really believe. The idea of posting on social media is directly tied to attention seeking, is directly tied to wanting to be successful on social media, and so if nobody watches your content, you're a failure, and being a failure is embarrassing. And there are so many people out there who relate to wanting to be good at something right away because we view it as so embarrassing to be bad at something, to try to do something and to not have skill at it. Nobody wants to go watch a play put on by a bunch of bad adult actors. Consuming bad art is like good for the soul. I'm 100% convinced that consuming bad art is good for the soul. I think we all need to do it. And I just think it's crazy that like kids are granted a grace that adults just aren't, where you'll go and you'll watch a kid's play where every actor in it is horrible because they're children. Why would you expect a children's play to have good actors in it? Those are children. But if you're going to see a play with adult actors in it, you expect those actors to have a certain amount of skill that the kids just don't have. And this leads to a culture where if you didn't start something when you were a kid, you're almost not allowed to pick it up as a hobby because how dare you be bad at it as an adult? Not only how dare you be bad at it, but how dare you be bad at it and make me witness how bad you are at it? How dare you do that to me? How dare you waste my precious time by forcing me to watch you be bad at something? Fascinating. Why are we like this? Why do I feel this way? This is coming from experience. I myself struggle a lot with picking up new hobbies and wanting to be good at them right away. There's something just so embarrassing. There's something so embarrassing about being bad at something, and I find it so interesting, and I want to unpack it more for like its own video essay, but I just think the embarrassment of failure is a huge part in all of this. Like, we view it as embarrassing to post on social media and to have nobody be watching because we view that as a failure. And not only is it a failure, but it's a public failure. I also think that's why so many adults gravitate towards hobbies that are very private. You see a lot of people picking up crochet or even writing because it's something that you can do in your personal time that you don't have to show anybody if you don't want to. Whereas posting videos, like in and of itself, people are going to see what you're posting. And that's, I guess, what pulls me into the second point that was going to fork off of what I said before, which is that practicing art is valid no matter how good that art is. I've got a Kurt Vonnegut quote for you. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow, for heaven's sake. Sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell stories, write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something. I've spent 3 years working on my book now, and I'm in the second draft. If I never published it, either because I never finished it or because nobody wanted it, would I regret writing it? No, not at all. For a few different reasons. I think that time would have gone by anyway. So I spent it doing something I enjoyed a lot. I spent it doing something that excited me. But not only that, I've bonded with a lot of my friends who also enjoy writing as a hobby. I don't know. I just feel like this lesson is really getting hammered home for me that making stuff is food for the soul. It is. Consuming good art is food for the soul, of course, but consuming bad art is too. And I think we should all go watch the worst community theater play we can find in our city. Anything you make is valid and time well spent. And if you want to share it with other people, then you should. And we shouldn't view it as embarrassing to share that with other people. There's a saying that's been going around online that to be cringe is to be free. And a lot of people have rejected it by arguing that there is some kind of societal value to cringe. But I do think that every time you cringe, there should be a moment of reflection as to why you're cringing. Are you cringing because that person is rejecting a societal notion that's actually hurting others? Or are you cringing because you're perceiving what they're doing as embarrassing, but they aren't actually hurting anybody else and what they're doing isn't actually all that bad? Especially if all that person is doing is sharing their art and you don't think the art is very good, and so you're judging them because you don't think the art is very good. I would definitely challenge that within yourself, and I would especially challenge it if you see people you know in real life posting online trying to make social media content. Get that like weird cringe, like, ooh, is that embarrassing for them? Do they feel embarrassed doing that? Take a step back and question yourself. This was kind of all over the place. I feel like I'm gonna have trouble editing it. I'll do my best, as I always do. And you know what? If it wasn't that good of art, I made my own point defending myself through the whole thing. I had a lot of fun making this. I hope you guys enjoy watching it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!